This is Navigating the Middle Market, a podcast by Pitcher Partners that tackles the make or break moments every successful business leader faces when taking your business to the next level. On the show, we'll talk to experts who'll share actionable insights to help you navigate the common pitfalls you'll experience when scaling up. I'm your host, Anna Hacker. Today we're chatting with Gavin Debono. Gavin is a partner at Pitcher Partners Melbourne. Gavin has the rare ability to translate complex business challenges into clear actions. He combines technical expertise with genuine understanding to assist his clients with everything from structuring their business for growth, navigating family business relationships, and even capitalising on opportunities when they arise. In this episode, Gavin will discuss how middle market leaders can respond to uncertainty. He'll unpack the biggest drivers of uncertainty for business owners today, how smart leaders balance cost management with strategic growth, and he'll explain why some middle market businesses are actually in a better position to capitalise on emerging opportunities than larger organisations. Let's jump in. Hi Gavin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me.
Let's get right into probably the biggest concern that people have, and that is around uncertainty. What does the future hold? So what would you say are the biggest drivers of uncertainty for business owners right now?
Well, that flows straight into the latest Business Radar report. We surveyed 150 middle market business leaders, really to look at what trends and challenges and opportunities that they're facing and to put that out in the publication for all of our clients, but also just middle market businesses around Australia. And what we found was quite a wide range of factors that business leaders are contending with at the moment. If we just looked locally here at Australia, it really is about costs. So it's increasing costs of operations. It's about inflation, which has obviously been around now for quite a few years, really since the COVID pandemic started. And also regulation and compliance matters are front of mind at the moment as well. If we do look more broader, the conflicts and tensions in certain parts of the world are definitely adding to the unease felt by Australian businesses, and also just the constant changing goalposts, I think, with the US tariffs that are being announced and changed, definitely causing a bit of complexity that leaders are having to deal with.
So how are middle market leaders responding then?
I think it's fair to say that they're not panicking at this point in time. And we do find that middle market business leaders do take quite a measured approach when facing all sorts of different issues through their business, whether that's the economy, through government regulations, or even internal factors that they're having to deal with. So they do definitely take a measured approach, considered approach, and are very thoughtful in the steps that they take to solve whatever issues they're facing.
And so then what would be the first piece of advice when a business owner comes to you worried, a bit concerned about inflation, rising costs and other factors that influence uncertainty? What is that first piece of advice that you might give them?
Well, it probably doesn't sound too sexy, but I would say that I'll bring the conversation back to fundamentals. At the end of the day, business really runs off cash flow. So it's making sure there is a positive cash flow happening. Look at the strength of the balance sheet of the business and looking at just fiscal discipline. Are there budgets? Is there regular reporting against those budgets? A decision can then be made from that regular reporting. I think also each business will be different. However, there'll be similar levers that businesses can pull to help protect their margins, because when we're looking at costs, the other side of that is revenue and making sure that there's still adequate margin being made by the business. So we can look at different drivers of revenue and different drivers of costs. On the cost side, it's really important to review and understand the operational efficiency of the business and to optimise it. It can include reviewing and streamlining processes, identifying and implementing new technology solutions throughout each of the processes, optimising the supply chain, down to reviewing each and every expense line and trying to either reduce it or eliminate it. On the revenue side, look at your pricing policies, ensure that you do have a deep understanding of customer needs and the value that you are bringing those customers, and really strengthen those customer relationships. But one thing I guess I will make a point of is it's really important going through these different changes and analysis within the business is not to lose sight of what value you are creating and bringing to your customer. It's really important to understand their needs and what they need from you. So any changes that you do make within your business, can't impact upon that. It should only be looking to add to that value creation for your customer.
And so many of your clients are simultaneously cutting costs while pursuing those growth opportunities, which probably sounds counterintuitive. How do you help them navigate something that seems like a conflict? It's a conflict of priorities.
Yeah, I can see how maybe at first brush you might think there is a conflict there, but you'll find in most cases businesses are not only looking at one area in isolation, so not only looking at cutting costs, they will also continue to look at future direction for the business and future growth opportunities. And I think it really comes down to what the strategy is of that business, making sure you've got a strategic plan in place, and then every action that you are taking are steps towards that plan and in delivering those outcomes that you're looking for. We did see that in our recent radar, 69% of businesses are cutting costs just in reaction to the current uncertainty that they're facing, but also nearly as many looking at expanding into new markets and also bringing new products and services to the market. So you can see that they're looking at both areas of the business at the same time. And I think that's really important because at the end of the day, a growing business will be a successful business. And it's important that while there might be a focus on reducing costs in a particular area of the business, there still needs to be some investment in that growth area to make sure that your business continues to be relevant and you're meeting your customer requirements.
So what would be the difference between businesses that you see thrive during uncertain times, Gavin, versus those that really just survive?
I guess the fundamentals are probably a given. So I've spoken about the fundamentals before, so cash flow, strong balance sheet, regular measurement and reporting. Whether you're surviving or thriving, I think those businesses are handling those aspects
The
quite well.
non-sexy parts that
The
I think you
non-sexy
referred
parts,
to it
that's
as
right.
earlier.
But I think the key differentiator between thriving versus surviving really comes down to the human capital within an organisation. That is the intangible that's different between each business. And really, mindset is key and plays a big role. Leaders who tend to bring the right attitude, frame of mind, energy into the organisation, limiting negative thoughts, behaviours, and bringing positive reassurance, particularly to problem solving, planning and implementation. When change is evident, it really does go a long way to bring the internal team together and driving in the right direction. And thriving businesses tend to have those teams that are working together and working towards that common goal. Other key attributes that I do see would be that thriving businesses tend to be more proactive rather than reactive, less afraid of making change to their organisation. The leaders definitely communicate very clearly, transparently, and with intent. So every communication piece, there's obviously a purpose behind that communication. And investing in relationships, whether that's with key stakeholders as part of their supply chain, whether that's with their customers or internally in the organisation, making sure that there are strong relationships with each other. When we look at businesses that tend to just survive and get through, they're a bit more reactive to things. So things will happen and then they'll react and change only when they have to. So they're sort of forced to in order to survive. But don't get me wrong, surviving businesses can still be good businesses. As I said, the fundamentals could still be strong, but they might just have a mindset that's less growth orientated, more about maintaining status quo, focusing on their key customers, etc. But yeah, that mindset of growth, that mindset of bringing everyone together, achieving something is certainly something that I see as a differentiator between a thriving business versus a surviving business.
And it feels like the idea of having a purpose, having something that everyone can link back to, whether that's in the communications, whether that's in why you're doing what you're doing, but the importance of having that for the people that are working with you, that are actually the heart really of the business, sounds pretty key, which is then part of planning for success.
Yeah, that's right. And that comes back to the entrepreneur behind the business in the first place. Why did they get into business? Why did they start it? And what is their passion? And that passion usually does overflow into the whole team.
And so what would you say to a middle market business owner today who's feeling uncertain about the next 12 months?
I guess every business is different. So every business and business owner will be facing different challenges. So context, I think, is important when looking at this question. I'd probably remind them of where they've come. So they would have started the business with a purpose, with a goal, and there certainly would have been challenges and tough times that they were faced throughout their journey. They've gotten through those tough times and they would have come through stronger themselves, but also the business also would have come through stronger. Now try and get their focus just back on things that they can control rather than the big scary things that are happening out there in the wide world that are happening to them. So things like the sexy fundamentals, cash flow, strengthening the balance sheet, measurement and reporting, but also making sure that they're focusing on their strategy as well. We talked about how important planning was in some of the previous questions. It's really trying to get them to start thinking back towards a strategic view, depending on where they're at that point in time. It might be just starting from something as simple as doing a SWOT analysis, so looking at their own business and what is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Again, just to get the mind back in that strategic sense and to get them focused on things they can attend to. I do find that a lot of business owners can feel a bit isolated, particularly when they're dealing with things that are quite uncertain and things they haven't come across before and they're trying to navigate their way through it. I really would encourage them not to tackle these things alone. There will be people within their sphere that they can lean on, whether that's their advisors, whether that's peers within either the organisation or outside the organisation. It could even be competitors that they're close with, have some discussions through that. So there'll be people within their network that they can lean on. Definitely encourage them to make use of that. Middle market businesses should take a little bit of heart that they're in a unique position where they're large enough compared to small businesses where they've got usually a bit of resilience about them in terms of the strength of their balance sheets or cash flow or size of their business and resources, but equally they're smaller than those larger organisations and a lot more agile and able to move with the times and change as circumstances require it. So they've got a little niche there that they can work through.
That sounds really important, to not be stuck down in the bureaucracy of a larger organisation then.
Yeah, that's right. We often see larger organisations do get a bit bogged down in the bureaucracy. Decision making can have quite a few layers that needs to get through, and sometimes turning the ship can take quite a while. So yeah, it's definitely an advantage for middle market businesses.
Now, the Business Radar report also shows that consumer tastes and preferences ranked as the fourth biggest driver of confidence for middle market leaders. And so how can business leaders stay ahead of shifting customer expectations while they're growing their business, while they're scaling up?
It's not unsurprising, I guess, that customer preferences rates highly in terms of endearing confidence in business leaders. And it's certainly been in the top 5 factors for at least the last 3 or 4 years that we've been doing Radar. What we saw this time was that about 38% of businesses are adapting to changing customer needs as a key strategy during this uncertainty. I talked about previously the importance of having close relationships with your customers and really understanding what they're about and what they need. And that is shining through in the research that we're conducting through Radar. And I guess how can a business gain that insight on what customers are needing and what their preferences are changing to? And it really comes back to, do you have systems and processes in place to track what your customers are doing? What I mean by that is that could be, what products or services are they buying from you? Is there any change in those products or services? The volume, is there any change in that volume that they're purchasing? What about the method that they're buying from you? Is that changing or staying static? Another one that's often overlooked, but I think go and talk to your customer. I think it's really important to have that close relationship with your customer, that you want to understand the direction that they're heading in. Does your product or service still meet the needs of where your customer is actually going into the future? Maybe you need to change to help stay with them. Maybe you can work together and collaborate actually to help that customer into the direction that they're moving. So I think there's a lot of things that a business can do to make sure that they've got that strong relationship with their customers, but also they're understanding exactly how the customer is interacting with you and how you can interact with your customer.
And probably having the right IT systems in place becomes quite important then to properly analyse a lot of the data and information that you've just talked about. Being able to gather as much information and analyse it quickly probably depends quite a bit on IT systems.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, depending on the distribution channel that you're employing. For example, if you do have a website and you're having sales through that website or through Amazon or Shopify, wherever it might be, there'll be a lot of data that you're able to collect through those platforms. But you might have data from multiple different sources. So being able to bring all of that data together in the one spot and then reporting on that data is really important. So making sure that you do have that technology piece in place to allow that, I guess, data collection and then reporting from disparate systems is important.
Then how can business leaders balance the emotional aspects of succession planning with the practical need to ensure businesses remain resilient during periods of market uncertainty?
Looking at succession planning, on the one hand, It is a strategic imperative for business continuity and resilience for uncertain market conditions. But then on the other, it is really an emotional process. Leaders may feel personal anxieties. The future can be uncertain. Employees may worry about the future and so on. So when going down a succession planning process, I think the first point I would make is it's going to take a longer time than you would first think. 10 to 15 years is not uncommon for successful succession planning processes. And really, it should be a continuous process that continually be tweaked and adapted as things progress. People's desires change throughout a process and over time, and the decisions that the business owner or whatever the successor might be can change over time as well. So I think it's a continuous process that should continue. Open communication with stakeholders is critical. This includes employees, includes family members as well, because it's definitely a big change people are working through. And it helps manage expectations, reduce uncertainty, and foster, a climate of trust between all parties. If we're looking at succession, because it can take many forms, it can be a sale, it can be a transition to someone already in the business, it can be a transition to a family member, for example, coming in to help run the business. So if we're looking at handing over to someone either within the business or another family member, it's really important to prepare that person holistically for that role. It's not just about having the deep technical expertise or strong commercial acumen to come into that role. Being a leader really is also an emotional roller coaster. So being able to make decisions around conflicts and resolving those conflicts, inspiring your team, managing the whole business through uncertainty and navigating those uncharted waters. It's really emotional, and you need to build that within that person who's going to be stepping into those shoes.
And so what are the other big risks with the succession planning and potentially the reasons why you need to do it sooner rather than later?
Well, there can be reliance on a key person within a business, and I guess the sooner that you can start working towards, reducing or eliminating that focus or requirement for that key person in the business, the better the successful outcome of any succession plan will be. So, and it takes time. So really look at documenting processes, documenting relationships, writing down whatever the special sauce is within that organisation that makes it successful, develop a management team that has depth so it can actually deal with all the different challenges of that business when that key stakeholder is no longer there. Also, a key area that is often overlooked, and that really is assessing the leadership capability of the team that's in the organisation. Obviously, if there is the original entrepreneur or owner looking to step away, they do take away a lot of knowledge and a lot of that leadership skill with them. So when they're not there, there generally would be a gap in some area of the leadership team. So it's making sure that those gaps can be filled when that person's no longer there.
I started this question talking about the emotional aspects of that succession planning, but that would have to be key when you have someone who was central to establishing a business thinking about leaving that business, whether that's because they have to, they want to, or they just know that given we all age, there's a point where they won't be able to continue. Putting the right people in at an earlier time, no doubt, would make that whole process far easier, but still emotional.
It can be a very difficult time, and if that was your business that you'd been working in for the last few decades, you'd grown it into what it is today, it can be very difficult to let it go or to move on and have someone else start running it. So we do see that it's a very delicate period and it needs to be handled delicately and well. And I think the longer the time frame, the easier it is for people to get their heads around what might be changing into the future.
And so, Gavin, this has been a really interesting discussion around this critical question of uncertainty in the middle market at the moment, whether there really is a lot of uncertainty, whether it's something that is planning, be aware, not alarmed. But is there anything else that you'd like listeners to think about?
Well, I think any economy, any industry, any business is always going to be faced with uncertainty. I think it is fair to say that there are higher levels of uncertainty around at the moment, and certainly the media do play into that narrative. And I think it's really important for business leaders just to take a step back, focus on those fundamentals, but also just be proactive in managing all the different areas that are changing around them and making sure that their business is well placed into the future.
Thank you so much for all of your insights. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Anna. Had fun. Thank you.
You've been listening to Navigating the Middle Market. This podcast is brought to you by Pitcher Partners Melbourne. To learn more about how Pitcher Partners can help you scale your business, head to our website, pitcher.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of Navigating the Middle Market, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others to find the show. I'm Anna Hacker, and I'll see you in the next episode.